Hey everyone, welcome back to White Sparrow Living, Luke 12:6. I'm Wendy, and in this episode we're doing some fun patriotic Dollar Tree and thrift flips, or more like trash to treasure, I don't know, recycled projects. Anyway, let's just get started. So Dollar Tree always has a great supply of dishes and dinnerware, and so for this project I picked up a red and a blue plate. For some reason they didn't have a lot in the whites. These were kind of square and I didn't want to use those, so I had one at home in my Dollar Tree stockpile, so I'm going to use that one for this project. So I have my red, white, and blue plates, and I decided what order I wanted them to be in, and then I'm going to use a chunky wood star, also from Dollar Tree, and then 3 of the ever popular candle holders. I'm just gonna take off all the tags and then get my items ready. I'll take off the stickers from the bottom of my plates. And I don't know, for some reason the Dollar Tree stickers nowadays are a lot easier to get off. Well, especially when it's on, dishes or glassware. Anyway, I'm gonna take some permanent adhesive and put that on the top of my candle holder, and then I'll add some hot glue. And I'm gonna place these upside down. Well, the bottom one's gonna be right side up, so this will be the stand. You see what I'm saying? So my red plate is gonna go on the bottom. And then for the next 2, I'm gonna put that candle holder upside down. So I found that it's a little bit easier if you put it onto the plate that's going on top of the bottom tier, if that makes sense. I'm doing it backwards, I think. Just after doing it the first time, I found that it was a little bit easier to do it the other way. But if you see, I have the fatter side, or the bottom of the candle holder, it's going to be on the bottom of the white plate. That'll be the next tier. Does that make sense? So I'm just going to do the same thing with the permanent adhesive and then the hot glue. You're not really supposed to mix these, but I didn't really care because these are going to sit overnight so that they get a really good adhesion and they'll be snug as a bug in a rug. And then for my top plate, I could not get that guy centered, so I finally had to use some dry erase pen, and I made the outline of where that needed to be. And this is a time when you really don't want to eyeball this. So I wanted it to be straight and level. And I'll show you how this is going to turn out, but first I want to tell you how excited I am to be collaborating with my sweet friend Karen over at the Loft Home Decor. Now she's on the East Coast and I am on the West Coast, so we're calling this collab from sea to shining sea. And I just love her so much. We first met on Instagram and we used to do the Dollar Tree DIY tours. I don't know why we don't do those anymore. But anyway, I saw her projects and I absolutely fell in love with her projects. She is so talented, and her Boston accent, you're gonna love it. Ooh, and that's mine now too. She sent that to me. Anyway, you will love everything she creates. I promise you won't be disappointed. You will absolutely love her. Give her some love. Let her know I sent you. And if you're coming here from her channel, welcome, and I am so happy you're here. So I'm going to put my tiered tray aside for a minute, and we're going to make some cutie patootie things to put on top of it. I first took some spackle and I'm going to fill that little hole inside there, and I don't even wait for it to dry before I start painting it. I just want to make sure it's completely full, and since it'll be on the top of my tray, I want both sides to be completely solid. So now I'm going to take my white chalk paint and I'm going to paint the edges first. That way I can hang on to it, and then I'll lay it down and then paint the top, and then once that dries I'm going to paint the back also. Anytime you can make something double-sided, it makes the piece more versatile, and you can put it on the top of something that's going to go in the middle, like on a centerpiece or something. But anyway, I'm going to take my sanding block from Dollar Tree and I'm just going to sand the edges just to get it nice and pretty and let a little bit of that wood show through. So now I'm going to take my red paint pen, and you could use your CRICUT if you have a cutting machine and cut the word or cut USA out. I didn't want to do that, so I'm just gonna freehand this. But I do know that my friend Karen, she's gonna do it a little bit differently, and hers looks a lot better than mine. You'll see that though when you watch her video. So now I'm gonna take some different ribbons. I have some 5/8 inch gingham, and then a little bit of lace, and then some really skinny blue pieces. I'm gonna make a few bows out of those and then tie them all together with some of that blue ribbon, and then I'll hot glue that right to the side of my star. And I feel like those little blue ribbons, the way they kind of stick out, you'll see in just a second, I thought it kind of looked like firecrackers, so that worked out well. Now I was going to attach this star to the top tier or the top plate of my tray, but then I was thinking if I wanted to use this for cookies and desserts, which is what it was originally going to be, I want to leave that open so you could actually put a whole cake on there. So when I'm done with my foam paint brushes, I always keep the handles to use in projects. I'm going to do that here along with some skewers and some jute twine, and then my red, white, and blue Waverly chalk paint. And you see it's in crimson, ocean, and white. And I made a little graphic of which colors I wanted to use and how I wanted to paint these so that they weren't all one color, or, you know, they kind of mixed and matched together. So I'm going to paint 2 of my sticks in white, and then one I'm going to do in blue, and then another one I'm going to do with a little bit of blue and the majority of it red. And then I'm going to go through and decorate those in different ways. This is so much fun. And you're going to see Karen is amazing with her wood projects. And so you can do this on a larger scale. But for this project, I had to have things that were a little smaller that would fit between the tiers of my tiered tray. So that's where this came from. And I just kind of had to be resourceful and think of little things that would fit in there. And it's always nice to use your scraps because remember, it's not hoarding if you use it. So now I'm going to take some of that jute twine, and I actually glued it inside the little holes, and they look like little firecrackers, which is super cute. But I got distracted because I was watching the Karen Reed trial and accidentally put it on the wrong side. So I had to pull those out because I wanted my skewers to go inside of there. And I forgot to mention that I'm going to paint my skewers as well. And I just cut each one of those in half and then painted them with, you know, coordinating colors. And then, so my sticks are going to go where the holes are in my handles. And then on the other side, I'm just going to glue the little piece of twine at the top. And then I'll cut those pieces of twine later. And you can see I like to always leave more than enough jute twine because I never know if I want to leave it like that, but I did decide to cut those down. And then once I got them all together, I'm going to take my hot glue and set them up in the way that I want them. So they're a little bit staggered and you can see all of the pretties. And then I'll just glue those all in a little stack of sweetness, and then took some more of that ribbon and wrapped it around and tied a sweet little bow, and it was done. So now I'm going to recycle this artichoke heart jar, and I love these because they're so small and petite. And then I'm going to take some of Dollar Tree's red felt letters. I'm going to do USA. I'm going to do those twice, or I'll find 2 of each one. And then I have some Dollar Tree stars that I kind of collect, these wood ones. I didn't have very many left, so I ended up having 2 larger ones and then 1 smaller one. I'll paint the 2 larger ones with my white, and then the middle one, which is smaller, that'll be blue, you know, the Waverly Ocean. And then I'm going to glue those together. Now, not a lot of stuff fits in this jar, so I kind of mushed those up and had those hugging, and then put the blue one right on top. And then right on that, I'm going to take my red letters and just put USA on there. And I'm going to do that on both sides. So again, this will be a two-sided little piece that I can use anywhere. So you saw that I tested it out to make sure that it fit inside of my jar, but getting it to stand up was a little tricky. So I took one of these Dollar Tree blocks. I'm going to glue that to the bottom of my little stars, and then to put it into the jar, well, first I'm going to hold it, and then I'm going to add some red and white foam filler beads, also from the Dollar Tree. And I think it's really cute to add some sparkle to any of your patriotic and 4th of July projects. So that's what I did. I'm just going to put some in there, and then I'm going to add some glue to the bottom of that block, and then I held it with some tweezers so that it would attach to the bottom of my lid, and then I just screwed it on there, and then it was snug as a bug in a rug. And then to cover that black lid, I'm just going to take my red and white gingham ribbon and hot glue that around the bottom there. And I can still get it open if I need to, but then at the opening, or where I glued them together, I'm going to take one of these little sweet bows from, these are actually, I think, no, these are from Dollar Tree, and you know, where they have like the card of 70 of them on there. I'm just going to cut down the wire and then hot glue that right where that seam is, and it's done. And look how sweet. But again, it's going to fit in my tiered tray, so that was the key. So now I'm going to take one of Dollar Tree's long signs, and I did 4-inch slices. I'm going to make a little book stack, and again, because we have such narrow openings on our tiered tray, I thought this would be perfect. So I'm going to paint one red, one white, and one blue. Again, I guess crimson, ocean, and white. And then while those are drying, I'm going to take a Dollar Tree beaded garland. And since I've already got my brushes wet and the paint is out, I decided to paint these with the red, white, and blue theme again. And it's so pretty if you kind of use a dry brush. On the first one, I did it really pretty dark. I was going to make them completely solid, but then when I was running out of paint, I saw that it leaves that little opening with the wood showing, you know, right in the middle, like you would have on worn beads. So I'm just going to do that. This is super easy, and these are already made up, you know, from Dollar Tree. Now you could leave it with the raw wood for the white one, and that gives it a little more of a rustic look. But because my plate is bright white and everything else I was using had the bright white in there, I just wanted to show you how cute it is if you did just leave it with the raw wood. But I'm going to go ahead and paint mine in the bright white, and then I'll give it that little dusty coating on the rest of the beads. And then now that my books are dry, I'm going to take my white paint pen, and on the blue one and the red one, I'm going to write God and America. And then on my white book, I'm going to take my red paint pen and write bless. So now we have God bless America. And then I'm going to take some really pretty ribbon, and this blue and white striped ribbon is from burlapfabric.com, and then the white and red flower sack stripe ribbon is from Walmart. I'm just going to tie those and not even put them in a bow. I'm just going to make a little knot and cut the ends at an angle. And then I took a Dollar Tree cross. It says hope in white, and I'm just going to attach that with some jute twine. Now I found this sign from the Dollar Tree. It says, "God is my refuge." And I really didn't want to paint over this, but we're taking it for the team. I love this so much. But anyway, I'm going to take my white chalk paint, and this is going to be a small sign, you know, for the top of our tiered tray. So that's why I had to paint over it. But anyway, I'm going to paint it all white. And I only did one coat of this, which is the reason why I love chalk paint so much, aside from the fact that it's always so bright and beautiful white. So once that dries, I took a sheet of binder paper and I'm going to go around and measure it. I'm going to fold it over the edges just a little bit further than where the holes are, and I'll make my own holes with a star hole punch that I had. And the reason why I had to move it over was it didn't have the right proportions with the holes being on the sign. You'll see what I mean. So I had to make it a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to take some Mod Podge, and I didn't think there was this much in there, but I took a little foam makeup sponge and rubbed that down. And then while it's drying, I'm going to let that dry. And then I took some colored pencils, and in red and white I wrote the Pledge of Allegiance. Now I would have done this with some pens. I had my pens out, my felt pens, but they were all dried up, and so I was really bummed about that. But I really wanted to show you guys how to do this project. So if you just write out in regular handwriting the Pledge of Allegiance, I think that's such a patriotic thing to do. So I'm going to take my paper, but I really would have liked that in the darker blue and red. But you know, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. So once I get that all done, I'm going to take another piece of binder paper and put it right on top of my words. I wasn't sure if the colored pencil was going to melt from my little iron, and all of the supplies and things that I use in all of my videos I'll have linked in the description box below, or I think it's on the shop button that you'll see at the bottom of the screen. I'm not sure where it is. Anyway, then I took some more of that flower sack stripe ribbon from Walmart, and I'm going to go around the outside edge of my little sign, and I didn't put any at the bottom so that it stands up straight. Here it is all finished, and I'm just going to put that sign right on the back. I added a little Amazon plant that I get kind of in bulk. I think they come like 3 or 4 in a box, and I use these everywhere. But I put my little star and the Pledge of Allegiance, the plant, and my beaded garland on the top plate, and then I have my book stack on the second plate. You can see how narrow it is right there. And then a little bit of some Walmart hydrangeas in red is behind there. And then I have my firecrackers, my little USA dome, and then a sweet praying hands candle that my daughter got me. Another recycled project that I made a while back with my license plate. But I love this, and I hope you guys like it too. For this next project, I'm going to be using this 4th of July USA sign. Of course, it doesn't have to say USA, but it works out in the end because there's a little bit of peeking out that's going on. And again, glitter is always good during the holidays. And then I'm going to leave that little hanger on there. But I gathered some reds and some white ribbons. We're going to make a little bit of an American flag. I also have some flour sack towel, and you could use some red fabric also from the Dollar Tree. But I'm going to start cutting my ribbon down, and the length is about 14 inches, which is what I'm trying to show you guys here. And I just got a different assortment with different textures, but all in that same, you know, white. There's some that has glitter on it. Then you see this one is the burlap. There's some skinnier ones and then some thicker ones. And then the reds were really fun because you have all kinds of different patterns and widths and textures again. So I'm going to lay these out at my sign. So I'm putting the thicker ones behind it so that you can see that's going to go red, white at the bottom. And then once I get my thicker ones down, I'm just going to take the different widths and put them on top, but I'll go from the widest and then ultimately to the skinniest kind of ribbon. And I love mixing these patterns and the stripes and the checkered or gingham and the solids. And I even have some little red truck in there with the reds. and just have fun with this. And again, this is a really good way to use your scrap pieces too, if you keep any. I had actually cut out some other white ribbon and I put it aside and forgot to use it, which I was really bummed about that. It's that like spider webby kind, you know, I mean, it's not spider webby, but it's that lacy looking stuff from the Dollar Tree. But anyway, bummer. I didn't get to use it, so I'll have to use that on something else. And now I have some extra scraps. Anyway, then I used some grosgrain ribbon and then those really teeny skinny ones and just all kinds of prettiness going on here. So then I'm going to take my board and I flipped it over, and then I'm going to start with the skinniest ones first, and I'm just going to hot glue those down, and then I'll go to the next ones and hot glue those down as well. So you're doing it in the order that you have it laid out in front of you, but if you have a patterned ribbon, you do want to flip it over because that's going to be the front, you know, so obviously, I guess it's obvious, but anyway, most of these were not patterned. Well, the red ones were. Anyway, you see what I'm doing here. And then it works out perfectly. And if you don't have a perfect fit for your, you know, ribbons and the width of them, just spread them out and it'll work out in the end. And then for the top part of the sign, we're going to be covering that. I'll show you that in a second. But when you see, when I turn this around, you're going to see it's pretty cutie patootie just the way it is if you just leave the USA the way it is and just level up your Dollar Tree sign. So I was trying to find a way to use these Amazon roses, and we had a function and I ended up with a huge bin of these. So this was the perfect project to use some of these up. I'm going to take my wire cutters and cut off the stems, and I'll have these linked below as well. These are so pretty. I'm just going to start lining these up on my sign and hot glue them all the way across. This will be kind of the blue part of the flag. And then we'll add some little stars with some pearls. You'll see that in a second. But we had a church function and we have a million of these left over, and somehow I ended up with them. I think everybody thinks that I can use the, well, I guess I can, huh? So it's just a matter of storage. So I really do need to use them. But I thought this was perfect for this project. And again, this is optional because if you find a super cute sign from the Dollar Tree, you can just add that ribbon and it just makes it so pretty. So for the ends, in order to make it fit, I cut those right down about 3/4 of the way so that they didn't hang over too far on the right. And here's where I'm going to add my pearls, which will represent the stars. And I just went in between and just kind of staggered them. Make sure you don't use the, or you can't see the holes from the pearls because these are beads. And I'm just going to use my hot glue and tuck those in there. And then as a little addition, I love these little truck God Bless America signs from the Dollar Tree. They're little tin signs. And so I just took some hot glue and hung that right under the little roses and made sure it was on there good and tight, and it was done. And here it is all finished, and you see some of that blue glitter poking out from behind. That's why I think it's okay if you let that peek through. So I love how this turned out, and I hope you guys like it too. For this next project, I have this Lazy Susan, and Michael J put it out in the trash pile, and I was like, what are you thinking, Michael J? This we used in our paint station, you know, where I would paint projects on there. So it was getting pretty nasty. And we've been cleaning out the garage because we're kind of redoing it and moving some things around. So we didn't even have our paint station out. And so Michael J is sanding this down on our trash cans. But I love this sander. It's super easy and it's cordless, and I will have this linked in the description box below as well. But we gave it a coat of just house paint, and again, there's nothing like the bright whiteness of the Waverly chalk paint. You can see the difference. You know, that paint that we had on there, that he put on there, that says white, and it's not white when you look at it next to the Waverly. So there's a little ridge at the end. I'm going to take some painter's tape and mask that off, and then I am going to eyeball the little blue part of my flag. We're going to be putting a flag on here, and so I'll use my painter's tape to get the stripes all laid down. And to do that, I'm just going to take one piece of my tape, and then I'll take another piece, a smaller piece, and lay that next to it, so that will be the width of our stripes. And so then once you get that next piece of tape down, you'll pull up the little piece, and then you'll have a perfectly aligned stripe, or you know, the sizes are all going to be the same. And this was super quick. It was harder to kind of mask that outside rim more than anything else, but it's so worth it in the end. And so once I get it all masked off, I'm going to take my white chalk paint, and I pushed the edges down really well so that there wasn't any bleeding. But a lot of the viewers, you guys give me tips all the time. And so one way to keep things from bleeding through is to paint the same color as whatever your base coat is, and that will make it even crispier. Not crispier, you know what I mean. Crisper. So I'm going to do that on all the edges, and then I'll go in with my crimson chalk paint. I did mark off the little square. I should have put one there before so that I don't go over and into my blue. Anyway, I'm going to use my crimson paint and paint those stripes, and then I love paint or tape reveals, you know, when you pull it off. And I always pull my tape off when the paint is wet. Some people like to do it when it's dry, but I think for me it's better when it's wet. You do have to be a little more careful, but chalk paint tends to, you know, it can get a little crusty. So that's why I pull it off when it's wet. But you do you and pull it off whenever you want to, and just enjoy that reveal. So while that's drying, I used my CRICUT to cut out the words "One Nation Under God." And the font that I used is called Medina Script, and I'll have that link down below. And then I cut out a few stars, and I end up only using 3. I think I used 3. Well, we'll see in just a second. But I'm going to keep those stars for future use in case I need it. And for this project, I wanted to use it as a stencil. So I'm using some FRISCO stencil tape, and I'll have this linked in my description box below as well. I love this stencil tape. It's so good. And rarely gives you any of the bleeding, you know, because sometimes you do have to touch up, and that's okay. But I'm going to use a stencil brush to pounce that on. And the one good thing about doing patriotic projects is that I only have 3 colors that I really want to use every time to make everything coordinated. And so that takes a lot of the guesswork out of what colors you're going to use and the designs. So anyway, I'm just going to pounce that on there, and then I'm going to pull my stencil tape up, and then I'll use my weeding tool to get those little insides out as well. Again, you know, I'm using this, or I'm pulling it up when it's wet, so you really have to be careful with this and make sure that you don't, like, when you're weeding it with your weeding tool, some of that paint can get on it. So if you go underneath it, you can get it on the white part, or, you know, onto your surface, whatever you're stenciling onto. So just be very mindful and careful with that. And here it is, all finished, and I am so in love with how this turned out. I'm so glad I didn't get this thrown out, and it just goes to show you there can always be new life in something old. And I didn't even realize, but this was my very first patriotic video. I've never done one before, so hopefully I did a good job. Let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys enjoyed all of these projects, and if you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, comment, let me know what you think. If you're not already, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button down below, as well as the little bell right next to it, so that you can be notified every time I upload a brand new video. Don't forget to go check out Karen's video. I'll have that linked in the description box below. I hope everyone has a blessed day, and remember to always be the light. Bye!